thank you everyone for coming, especially considering this is Labor Day weekend. Special thanks go out to Joe Troyer, my mother's grandson, and my nephew, who flew out here from Florida. When my mom's brother Jack passed in 2011, he also joined my wife and I, who flew to northern Florida for the funeral. You're a good man, Joe. We're here to honor the passing of June Eileen Amanda Dunbar Watson. A friend of mine from our home state of Massachusetts emailed me his condolences and commented that, quote, "the greatest generation is fading fast," unquote. My eulogy today is to salute my mom as one of the finest examples of her greatest generation. Life of my mom's generation was not a bed of roses. World War I had just ended in 1918. World War II from 1939 to 1945 furthered Europe and Japan's devastation. The Great Depression racked the world from 1929 to 1939. The Korean War disrupted the United States and Asia from 1950 to 1953. And then the Vietnam War escalated from 1955 until 1975. Throughout it all, my mom and dad's greatest generation endured and finally prospered. Life was not always easy for my mother either. Within the turbulent world events swirling around her, she had her own personal predicaments. Born in 1924 in Paris, to wealthy globe-trotting parents, her idyllic childhood included nannies, lavish trips, and boarding schools. Mom's mom was Swedish, while her dad was mostly English with a little German thrown in. I loved having 1/4 Swedish ancestry, which matched my 1/4 Irish ancestry from my dad's mom. A few years ago, I was able to secure dual citizenship with Ireland and tried to do the same with Sweden, but their laws were different. Darn. Mom's sister Adele was born 2 years later, and they became very close siblings for 10 decades. However, their handsome older brother Jack ruled the household. He died in 2011 at the ripe old age of 91, while Adele lives in Las Vegas with her husband, Herb. Their health prevents them from being here today, but their constant loving vibes can be felt across the deserts and mountains. During my mom's declining time, Adele was mailing her beautiful notes twice a week to cheer her up and remind her of her past. Much thanks to her son Paul and family, who drove down from Orange County in nightmare traffic. The Dunbar Kids were raised in the very old style of parenting, where children were occasionally seen but not heard. An interesting family legend happened in Nice on the French Riviera. A movie director saw my child mom swimming in the Mediterranean. He was so taken by her beauty, he wanted to cast her in a swimming movie. Her parents said no immediately, so my mom always complained she was denied the chance to be a future movie star, a la Esther Williams. Everything was going great until my mom's father died at an early age. He was a very superstitious guy who even instructed his attorney to have him cremated, since at that time you needed 2 doctors to declare you legally dead before they lit the match. Unfortunately, he did not believe in life insurance, so the family was in difficult straits after his death. Mom's mother had to scramble to secure financial security by modeling and gradually selling off her considerable jewelry collection. To help remedy the situation, the family thought it best to emigrate to the United States before war came to Europe. Grandma and Uncle Jack came first, while Mom and her sister languished in an English boarding school. Once settled in Washington Heights, New York City, they sent for my mom and her sister. Then 12 and 10, they came unescorted by an adult all the way across the Atlantic Ocean in a passenger ship. What an adventure that was for a couple of preteens. Like so many of their contemporaries, the two preteens were somehow skirted across the Canadian border to their new home in New York. My mom's legal status in the U.S. remained unresolved for many years. Indeed, we found an old letter from the government threatening to deport her. Finally, citizenship came about when she married my dad. My mom was not alone in her situation. Many of her generation entered the U.S. this way, a fact mostly overlooked in the current debate on immigration. Life in New York was dramatically different than Europe. Gone were the nannies, boarding schools, and a life of privilege. It was replaced by public schools, tenement living in tight quarters, and taking in boarders to help pay the rent. They made the best of it, however, and had a fairly happy time in the Big Apple, where my mom lived from age 12 to 24. She met my dad in 1947 while they were both on vacation at a horseback riding camp in Vermont. Unbeknownst to Mom, her dog was in heat, and all these other dogs were following her around. This was my dad's chance to explain the dog's version of the birds and the bees, thus igniting their 53-year romance. They were married in 1948 in New York City and honeymooned on the New York and New Jersey coasts. Afterwards, they settled in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Mom loved my dad so much she converted from being a lifelong Lutheran to Catholicism and remained a devoted Catholic for the rest of her life. I was born first, and then my sister Judy 2 years later. In 1951, my dad, who had served on the front lines of World War II, fearing he might be drafted to fight in Korea, re-enlisted to get a better assignment. He purchased a trailer and brought his young family to live for 2 years in Clearwater, Florida, on the Gulf Coast, while he fought on the front lines of Korea. After his deployment, they moved back to Lawrence, Massachusetts, where they bought the house they would live in for the next 30 years on South Bowden Street in South Lawrence. My mom birthed 2 more children, Jamie and Jeannie, bringing her number of kids to 4 with an age span of 12 years. We all went to private Catholic elementary and high schools. 3 of us earned master's degrees. Mom was the ultimate soccer mom even before the term was coined, coordinating the many activities and dramas of 4 kids during the Ozzie and Harriet and Leave It to Beaver years. She'd drive my dad to the train station in the morning for his commute to Boston for his AT&F federal government job, then focus on us. She drilled us on our homework, was a den mother, and even helped me with my morning paper route when the snow was waist high. She was always the best-looking mom of my peers. All my friends envied me, but were sure to come over to say, "Hi, Mrs. Watson," and then blush with embarrassment. Dad retired in 1975. They decided they had lived long enough in the snowy and muddy New England weather. They sold their house, packed up everything, and moved to San Diego. Since Dad was a retired lieutenant colonel, they felt very comfortable in this growing military town, not to mention the year-round great weather and no snow. Early retirement saw them traveling all around the country, often renting trailers from the PX, their version of roughing it. Sometimes they took trips with their best friends, Sister Adele and her husband Herb from Las Vegas. What adventures and memories they had. When Dad died 16 years ago, in the year 2000, life changed considerably for Mom. Although she missed my dad hugely, she was now her own woman and did things that made her happy. She taught a water aerobics class for many, many years at the Jack LaLanne Spa. The only reason she stopped in her mid-80s was because the spa was sold to new owners who wanted to attract a younger crowd. She had a great relationship with her students, and they often went to lunch as a group to celebrate birthdays and holidays. I believe many of those same chums are here at the funeral. She was also very involved with the St. Catherine's Lady Auxiliary. They would have bake sales, played bunco, have group lunches, and did crafts together. Thanks also to the ladies from this group who are here today. Throughout all the global and personal challenges Mom faced, she was strong and resilient. She never gave up, and the same attitude persisted all her life. Now, please let your imagination fly loose and have June's voice in the following scenarios. My lieutenant colonel husband is fighting in Korea and left me with a toddler and an infant in a trailer, no less, in buggy, snake-infested Clearwater, Florida. No worries, I can handle it. I can do it. Raising 4 kids with a 12-year age span. No problem. Easy peasy. Sell my house of 25 years, pack up and move across the entire country to live in San Diego where I don't know a soul? You bet. Bring it on. Lose my beloved husband Joe after 52 years of marriage and still carry on? My hardest challenge yet, but I will survive. And survive she did. But more than survive, she thrived. My mom and dad transcended their global and personal struggles to build a successful life. They own homes on both coasts. They put 4 kids through private schools, with 3 of them earning master's degrees. Depression-era thrifty, they built diverse funds which enabled them to retire in comfort for 25 years, plus another 16 years from my mom after my dad died. And finally, they lived their life in their faith, attending Mass every week, observing the sacraments, and earning their place in heaven. May we all learn from their examples. I want to finish by sincerely thanking Tom Bear, my mom's conservator, and Jessica, my mom's part-time caregiver for the last year and a half. Without the 2 of them, Mom could not have lived and died in her home as she so specifically designated in her trust. Thanks again for coming, folks. Hey, and thanks to George Clooney, who just slipped in to pay his respects. Just kidding. But please join us at the reception immediately following. Thanks again.